welcome back, everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you with another talk, another glitch, and Wyatt Reed for another little segment. Wyatt, how you doing?
Good, man. You can't get rid of me.
We've got some memes lined up, and let's start it off with this one. Goths for Trump.
Huh. I did not know. I wonder how big of a demographic that is.
Right?
So,
How do you feel about Goths for Trump? How do you feel about Trump in general? What's your take on, MAGA and all that other good stuff?
well, he was definitely more amusing as president. Biden's only amusing on accident. Biden's amusing in the way that your, you know, great uncle with Alzheimer's occasionally says inappropriate things, and it's like you can't do anything but laugh. But Trump was actually amusing in the sense that he was funny. You know, he would say things, and because you can't really be a presidential president and be funny. Um, so he decided to be funny instead of presidential, and I kind of appreciate that. Um, it's it's not often that uh, you encounter like that, just kind of the willingness to not be taken seriously, or just like to he's part of the absurdity, he's part of the ridiculousness, and he embraces that role in a way that most politicians are just kind of, they're just too meek, and and they're playing a role. And
Limp-wristed, if I may say so.
yeah, right, they don't, they're just actors, they're just ugly actors. So what was that one? That was
It was by
Homo.
accident. I clicked on the wrong thing. One man show here, by the way, everybody who may not be aware. Oh yeah, and I didn't do the disclaimer this time because this is like the fourth take because we had like a bunch of issues, including my tongue. Um, so yeah,
You have a right to
everybody.
remain silent. Everything you can say will be used against you in a court of law. May God rest your soul.
Miranda rights mixed with last rights, right? Yeah, no, this is a comedy show. In case you're new here and you haven't figured it out by now, everything we say is a joke here. Nothing pertains to reality. If you like what I do, you can find me on Buy Me a Coffee and Buy Me a Coffee. If you don't, there's a button, and nobody can see that you don't. Um, yeah. Anyway, let's not get into the depth of YouTube censorship. You asked what the meme in the background was. That was about, it's also from National Meme Coordination Body of Serbia, their meme page. Um, how I sleep when I dream, and he's dreaming of the farmers getting to the EU Parliament. Um, built like the Tower of Babel. You know the EU Parliament building is built like the Tower of Babel. You know that, yeah?
I didn't. Is that on purpose? That's got to be on purpose.
I like that. You realize it's a comedy show. Yeah, I'm pretty fucking sure it's on purpose. Um, how do you feel about Ukraine running out of money?
They have money left?
um, all I hear recently is Ukraine's got all kinds of things running out. What do you feel about the war and what's gonna happen and all that other stuff?
Um, well, if Avdiivka is any indication, um, then the Ukrainians are going to be slowly destroyed, and just eviscerated, as we've seen happening for many months now. I mean, it's all over the news. It's all over the Western news, which for the past couple of years has been lying and claiming that everything's fine, and that this wonderful counteroffensive is going to change everything, and there's going to be, we're going to break through, we're going to get back Crimea, yada yada yada. At the beginning, I remember some of these people were joking about marching on Moscow one day, right? I don't know that. I mean, some of them were probably being a little tongue in cheek, but some of them genuinely thought that they would not only get back all this, territory filled with resources they want and covered with Russians that they don't, but that they would also just, blast right through and go into Russian territory and take a big chunk of that. Obviously, not the case. That was never realistic to anybody who was looking at this with a kind of a sober mind.
Or who has any like historical perspective or like geographical knowledge or like military awareness or like I could keep going, but like yeah.
Well, the thing is, like, plenty of people who do have all those things were willing to overlook them because they were just like so desperate to get one over on Vladimir Putin, big bad Vlad, that the evil Russians that so many of them had spent their entire careers focused on. They thought this was their big chance. We're finally going to do it, and they were wrong. They were just completely, totally wrong. Not to say that Russia didn't also make many military mistakes, especially in the early days, but they learned from those mistakes. And more importantly, they view this as an existential threat, and they're not just going to roll over. They view this as kind of a fight to the death now, and they're going to act accordingly. And that means that whatever is left of a rump state Ukraine is going to be verging on impossible to manage. It's going to be perpetually bankrupt. It's going to be run out of Washington, not out of Kiev, which will probably, in all likelihood, at some point, go back to being Kiev, right? Which will probably go back to being Kiev at one point.
Yeah,
and and then they'll have maybe Lvov left. Probably won't have Odessa. Almost certainly won't have Odessa. Probably won't have any access to the Black Sea. And the population that is left to suffer the consequences, that wasn't able to bribe their way out of the country or out of the military, will be left to pay the bill. They'll be left wondering why the hell they ever let many of these people talk them into a full-on land war with Russia. It's going to be looked back on as one of the West's greatest geopolitical mistakes of all time. Arguably a more significant blunder than something like Vietnam, or certainly the Bay of Pigs, because they played their game all the way through. There are no excuses left after this for why you couldn't destroy Russia. So it's the beginning of the end of Western deterrence, and we see that same dynamic being replicated and added to, augmented in many ways by what the Houthis are doing in the Red Sea. They are also calling that bluff, saying, "Okay, well, if you want to wage war, okay, you're on our turf now." These dynamics that surround this conflict favor us long term. We are on our home turf, and we can shoot cheap rockets at you for as long as this takes. And in the meantime, the Red Sea is not going to have significant amounts of traffic, certainly not Western traffic going through it for as long as you want to go back and forth with us. And it's kind of a similar dynamic to what we were talking about in Ukraine, where, okay, you guys you decided to come to us. We didn't bring Russia's borders to Western Europe. Western Europe decided that it had to be in charge of our borders. And then, you have this horrible civil war under that Kiev carried out under the guise of a counterterror operation. something which is being largely dismissed, by the way, by the ICJ in these recent court rulings. And the Russians decided, well, we have been planning for this for a long time. We have massive amounts of our artillery, and we're willing to bet that you guys are not actually going to be willing to shed blood yourselves on behalf of Ukraine, because you don't actually care about Ukrainians. And that's the great irony, right? Is that Russians actually care far more deeply for Ukrainians than Europeans or Americans. Russians actually view them as brothers to this day. And, you can have interactions in Moscow between people who, up until very recently considered themselves Ukrainians, may still consider themselves Ukrainians, but have very friendly relations. That's where the majority of the refugees from this conflict went, not to Western Europe, but to Russia, where they speak the language and feel more comfortable and are treated better. So this conflict is going to grind on until eventually something snaps, and whether that be the West's desire to continue funding this endless war, or that be just the military integrity, or the integrity, I should say, of Ukrainian military itself, we'll see. But it's only headed in one direction.
Haha, good joke, man.
That was one of my funniest ones.
Putin's gonna have a heart attack and all that other stuff. He's poisoned, and there's gonna be a revolution. Don't you know?
They're gonna resurrect Prigozhin and put him in charge. They'll have zombie Prigozhin.
That's another thing that I wanted to get to. But before, remember to get back to Strelkov. I wanted to get your take on Strelkov, but we'll get back to that first, because you were talking about the borders, the future borders of 404stan or Ukraine. I came across this map maybe 8 months, a year and a half ago, something like that. And it was colored down to here. I don't know if you can see my mouse. But the point is, I colored in a bit more, and I gave some to Belarus. Poland maybe gets some. We'll see what happens. Slovakia gets some. Hungary gets some.
That's very generous of you.
I know.
I see Slovakia. I don't know about those Poles, but what else are you going to do with that little chunk in the West?
This might be no man's land of Wild West Bosnia type of style, and this might be
I think from a Russian perspective, you want that. Why not do what they did to you? Why not have a nice little Chechnya or a little Xinjiang just right up on their borders, and you can just periodically mess things up. Just pull some strings. It seems like it worked out really well for the West. So, why not give them a little taste of their own medicine? Just have a permanent, you call it Banderistan or 404stan?
404, man. It's just missing. But Banderistan seems okay. Oh, and I was going to add a caveat to your, all Russians like all Ukrainians. I'd say most Russians like most Ukrainians.
No, I didn't say all Russians I'm just saying.
You didn't qualify it with most. Let's put it that way. I just want, the joke sounds better when you say it with most, right? So about this meme.
Sure.
About this meme map that I've got. This is the map that I drew or whatever, and this is Hungarian party Mi Hazank, who lays claim to Transcarpathia green area if Ukraine loses its statehood. This is 3 days ago or 5 days ago news. Maybe a week now. But the point is, this right extremist far right party, which we all know is a good thing in these days, realistically. And unless they're no fans of nuts kind of far right people. Those are not the kind of far right you want to be with. So yeah, the meme's becoming reality. That's what I was getting at. What do you think is going to happen to the end to Ukraine when it all dies down?
When we'll get what's sorry? Can you say that again? What's going to happen to Ukraine when it dies down?
Yeah,
When
like
this dies down?
when the fighting dies down. Yeah.
Well, that's just such a who knows, man. Who has honestly? I You should start like a betting pool or something. Like I would give decent odds on. Well, no, okay. So the favorite
This
obviously
is not
is
financial advice.
BlackRock. BlackRock. BlackRock is far and away the favorite of who gets control of that. BlackRock is number one. Vanguard a close second. Somewhere in a distant third, you might have, I don't know, the Brits or something coming in and just like, they're not going to make any money out of it, but they really love just making war with Russia. So they'll probably want to have a little piece of that. And then whatever's left of NATO, maybe they'll end up creating little outposts. I honestly think that what the West probably wants now is some kind of DMZ like Korea. That's probably
the,
like the best case scenario for them.
the Russians,
So
yeah, that is a best case scenario, and the Russians are looking at them and going, "Lol," you know.
right.
It's like, now you want peace? Come on.
Well, it was never about peace. It's just about not losing more than they had to begin with. So so I mean, yeah, from I guess it'll come down to how. First of all, I think it comes down partly to domestic politics, right? Biden not wanting to look soft on Putin. So whatever happens, I don't think is gonna, from the West, I don't think is gonna happen until after November. I think they're gonna kind of just keep it in a holding pattern. I imagine at some point they will manage to get the Republicans to go in and give them some Ukraine aid. I think it's gonna happen. I just It can only go on
I
so
think
long,
I think it's
Well,
already
because
happening. I think didn't that like recent bill pass for like 600 whatever billion for like Ukraine and Texas and Israel all
so that
together?
that was passed by the Senate, and the House leader has made a very strong case against it. He really has said very openly, "We're not going to pass that." Um, but just the way things are headed, I think eventually, sometime this year, you're going to see Biden um, and the Democrats decide we have to do something about the border because that's going to crush us in the election. We've already given up states like Michigan because we don't do anything for unions, and all the Arabs hate us now, and none of them are going to vote for us because we're sponsoring this genocide in Palestine. So I think at some point later on this year, Biden and company are going to gamble and say, you know what, we'll just give the Republicans basically whatever they want on the border, as long as we can get our Ukraine aid, so that we can maintain kind of the liberal anti-Russia vote, so that they're not too demoralized that that they don't stay home. That's how I kind of see that that's going to play out. That's my guess. Obviously, it's just an informed opinion, um, but ultimately, I don't think they're going to let the Ukraine thing go right away. But if Trump gets in office, man, it's over. It's over. It's just he's going to make a deal. He's the let's make a deal guy. He's going to make a deal.
Yeah.
Um, if the Democrats somehow connive their way into office. I don't see it. Looking at these poll numbers right now, it's almost unthinkable to me that they could win in November. I saw a clip from I think it was NBC News. I'm not totally positive, but they were recording or reporting on his most recent poll numbers, comparing them to where the last four presidents were at this point in their term, going up for reelection. And uh, Biden has worse numbers than any president since Bush in his second term, right? Biden
Bush
has
Jr.,
Biden is
I'm
looking out at
guessing.
30%, right? And he's right around 30%. You can't if we had the elections today, it would be a blowout, right? But of course, this was kind of how it looked last time around. And then you had COVID, right? And then you had, and that just changed everything. So there's always the possibility of some random, just who knows what happening. Um, I call it an October surprise. That wasn't even in October. That was in April, but it had the same effect. But other than that, my long-term prediction of how this all ends up is that probably Trump will get back in office, unless they're able to throw him in jail. But probably he will get back in office, and then he will make a deal with Putin. Exactly what that will look like, that is very difficult to guess. But you're definitely going to have guarantees about non-NATO membership, about Ukraine not going into NATO ever under any circumstances, and you might even have a broader demilitarization of Europe, which would be a wonderful thing. But what that will look like geographically, I would imagine that it's probably going to be just where things stand at the point in time when they make an agreement. I can't really imagine either side having the political space to just give up unceded territory. So that's, I imagine it'll end with kind of a formal demarcation like that. And things won't necessarily go back to normal, but you'll have kind of an uneasy peace at some point. Probably somewhat like North Korea, but who's to say?
You think
Because
you think the political implications of like the peace and like the actual requirements from both sides will have effects on things outside of the borders of Ukraine? Like, do you think like because
totally.
the Russians won there, the Americans will back off somewhere else, type of thing?
Well, no, the Americans are we're gonna delve further into our own continent. That's the long-term vision. We're gonna recolonize Latin America and try to uh, reassert the Monroe Doctrine. Right. That's
Time
the
out.
long-term.
I don't know if you know, but like they already got their own governments and they got internet and I might even have subscribers from Latin America. You know what I mean? Like there's no need for colonization there. Like I know it's
No,
in your history and
inconvenient
stuff.
details that will all be solved later. Don't worry. Who runs what country? Yada yada yada. It's not important. That's for us to figure out, and we'll let them know what we decide. So yeah, that's that. But that is long term. Like that's where it's going.
Unfortunately, I think you are correct. In like a good for the rest of the world way, not good for most of the Americas, like you guys included. Do you remember Nord Stream?
Nord Stream. Never heard of it.
It was that like pipeline that like some scuba divers from Ukraine,
Nord Stream.
like
Nord Stream.
5 of them. No, it doesn't ring a bell. It had something to do with Germany. I can't remember all the details. Right? It's the Mandela effect.
Sounds like Russian propaganda to me.
Yeah, this is a Russian propaganda channel. So like it's right at home here.
Is that what this? Okay.
Because we cover reality and facts, and often shit like that gets labeled as Russian propaganda. I mean, we joke about stuff that has nothing to do with reality. Anyway, one of the memes that I came across and why I bring up, Nord Stream. Biden pauses LNG export after pressure from climate activists. And Germany's going, what?
Oopsie.
Yeah.
We also did that.
When you say we did that, you
I'm
mean
talking about Germany. They made that same decision as well to become uh, climate positive without having constructed the infrastructure needed to actually do that. So um, they're going to pay the price too. And it's always kind of, it's like, it's funny, but it is like a sad, because it's not really the assholes who deserve to suffer from this are not the ones suffering from it. It's just random rural people who are gonna have to cut their own firewood for the foreseeable future and probably get taxed by the environmental police in Germany for doing it. Like, it's this weird. It's like I don't know. It's such a perfect metaphor for just liberal utopianism. It's just like we're just gonna do this, and then the science will just catch up. We'll be good. Don't worry, the science will catch up. Worst case scenario, America's always got us, right?
yeah, and Bill Gates likes you and does everything good for you. You were mentioning the disarming or demilitarization of Europe and NATO. I've got a meme ready here. This is the French army driving through a hangar for an artillery piece.
Is this a real
Um,
picture?
this is a real photograph of a
Wow.
French army howitzer driving through its hangar. I don't know how you managed to do that.
Who is
Like,
operating that? Is this Ukrainian or French operated?
no, I think it's French. From what I understood from the original
Wow.
post, it's French. But yeah, what can I say? The
So
European
that when
army.
they gave all those to Ukraine, that was just like a safety measure. That was just like a
Like, so they wouldn't hurt themselves.
yeah, right. Just get this stuff out of here. We don't want to touch it.
It's possible you're correct. It's possible you're correct. One of the other topics that we touched upon was Gaza and all that's happening there. And I came across. Let me put this on screen. I came across this, and this was supposedly in Jordan. All right, everybody knows that, like, the whole thing happened in October 7, and the next day they were told to take it down because Jordan, unlike Yemen, who is not free to do what they want, not even
No.
restaurant signs. How do you feel about, like, Yemen being the only Arab country to stand up to, like, what's going on?
Um, I guess they are kind of the only. Yeah. No. Well, they just have nothing to lose, right? And they've been in the same situation for uh, about a decade of just, oh, we are being bombed and destroyed and attacked all the time by this occupational entity. And so I guess the simplest thing I would say is that, one, they are operating from a level of morality that is kind of hard for us to contemplate in the West. Just like they just do things because it's morally righteous to do them instead of,
And on a state level, on a
and on a
state
state
level.
level, which
Yeah.
is fascinating because there's kind of this famous concept that states only act in self-interest. But here there is a level of I'm very skeptical when Israel and U.S. embrace the term deterrence, because what they really mean is domination. Um, but the concept of taking an action so that an enemy who only speaks the language of force will be dissuaded from doing what they're doing. That it's true, right? The United States only speaks the language of force, right? We do not speak, we do not operate out of moral considerations, humanitarian considerations, and the past 4 months have made that extraordinarily clear. That after years of whining and moaning about the supposed travesties the Russians are carrying out in Ukraine that they watch and ship weapons to the Israelis as they kill about 3 times as many civilians in 1/6 of the time, right? It's unbelievable.
Oh, did we lose Wyatt? We lost Wyatt. Well, we've gone over the 30-minute mark. Looks like those sneaky people with the big noses and keyboards got to Wyatt's computer. In any case, everybody who stuck around to the end, thank you for sticking around. We've got some things to discuss, so there might be another 20-minute episode coming soon. Everyone, thank you. Have a good one. See you soon.